It's an extremely high-risk situation, and the stakes couldn't be higher because it's the health of our planet that is at stake in the climate crisis. So any risk manager would tell you, in a high-risk, high-stakes situation, you need to do everything you can. Now, when the government first declared the emergency, I fully expected that they would run an awareness campaign of the type that they did with smoking, seatbelts, explaining to people the level of risk that we're exposing ourselves to by our behaviour. Now, that didn't happen, and it still hasn't happened. I thought they'd have a nice slogan like, fossil-fueled flying can injure your future and that of your children. Something simple and honest like that. But obviously that was extremely naive of me, because that would damage our tourist economy. And of course, money in our culture is far more important than our environment. So that was very silly of me to expect anything like that. So that, as yet, we are not ready for that level of honesty. Robert Courts talks about a concept called eco-socialism, dismissively saying, these climate protesters, they're talking about us making huge sacrifices in order to tackle this crisis. They're talking about us giving up our foreign holidays, unthinkable things. They're talking about revolutionising our economy so that instead of measuring things by money, we measure it by biodiversity. And it doesn't actually say in detail what eco-socialism would be, but that is essentially the idea, is that we should be measuring our prosperity by soil health, biodiversity, a sustainable size population. Now, if we look at our GDP, we're a very, very rich country, very prosperous. If we look at our biodiversity, our soil health, and whether we can support our own population, sustain it within our borders, we're in a lot of trouble and we're very vulnerable. And if the climate crisis causes one of our bread baskets to fail, we would have a hell of a job to sustain the population that lives within our borders. But it's all the way, this is our culture, this is the way we measure how well off we are, by money. So we're trapped in a box that has existed for decades, which is business as usual. It's a consumer culture that we all love and none of us want to let go. Now, the culture that we love so much, that we're in at the moment, that actually has not existed all that long. Because humankind, before the agriculture and the industrial revolutions, humankind, their main challenges in life were battling with the elements, surviving the natural world. Now, with the agriculture and the industrial revolution, that changed. And the challenge became earning money and deciding how to spend it. And that actually meant that the physical problem that is driving climate crisis, which is burning fossil fuels, actually coincided with the change in culture that is causing us to be unable to be realistic about the risks that we're facing. The climate crisis consists of climate tipping points which, like dominoes, are already starting to wobble. And we're in great danger of bequeathing to our next generation a great big bank balance and a barren earth. At the moment, our inability to grasp the magnitude of the danger that we're facing is actually more dangerous than the physical phenomenon itself, because we're unable to take all those actions that would mitigate the situation because we don't want to make the sacrifices. So we need to respect the fire alarm. The climate protesters are not extremists. It's the dangers that we're facing that are extreme. The difference between the climate protesters and the rest of the population is that they're being realistic about the risks and feeling the fear that comes with being in great danger. Whereas the rest of the population are hoping that technology is going to sort it all out, believing that technology will sort it all out. So our reliance on technology and our overdeveloped imagination is currently preventing us from engaging fully with reality and feeling the worry and the anxiety and the fear and the panic that would motivate us to do something really radical to address the problem. That would involve moving out of our comfort zone, giving up big sacrifices, noble sacrifices. To break out of that trap, we need to start using our awareness on a whole different level. Firstly, we need to use our 5 senses of touch and smell and sight to see the damage that we're doing to the environment and to realise that it's not a problem that's a long way in the future that we've been thinking for so many years. It's here and now. We've had record temperatures in January. We've got flooding that the nature of which is so unusual. We have to be realistic. The problem is now. And as regard to the media, we need to see through the emissions, see through that emphasis where they're pushing us to reassure us and lull us into a false sense of security. We need to resist the advertising. And we need to be realistic about the risks that we're facing. And the other main antidote is the way we assess everything that we do. We need to think selflessly. Instead of asking ourselves, can I afford it financially? We need to ask ourselves, can the planet afford it? Can the environment afford it? It is a lot about fear level. And I love this quote from Mark Twain, where he says that courage is resistance to fear. It's mastery of fear, not absence of fear. Now, I think that is what is ailing many of us. We're not frightened enough to do the sort of things like never flying ever again, or in my case, giving up my golf. It was a very painful realization that one of the recreations that I loved most was not compatible with being an eco-warrior. It involved me in my petrol car, going miles to the golf club, and then, of course, for the away matches, going even more miles. So for me, it was a huge step. In this battle, in my opinion, I think public opinion is going to be either our strongest weapon or our downfall. Because we're all empowered to change our opinion. We can't ask politicians to solve this, because they can't bully people to change their attitude, change their behaviour. They could run an awareness campaign. That might help. But if you were to shift from being an eco-pacifist into being an eco-warrior, what you will discover is that you're then moving into a minority group. And being in a minority group you will need to be prepared to meet with derision and ridicule and condescension. If you do actually raise your fear levels, if you manage that step and you manage to be critical of business as usual, then talking with friends, relatives and colleagues will impact on public opinion, because that can ripple out. It could even become a tidal wave if there were enough of us. And if you decide to reduce your own carbon footprint seriously, like the sort of decisions that I talked about, like giving up something that you really love because you know it's got a high carbon footprint, then you may have to you will be constrained by business as usual in certain respects, because you will still be obliged to earn money to look after your family, so it's not easy to change your job. But you certainly, as far as leisure activities, you have a choice. Nobody's forcing you to go on your foreign holidays. There you can vote with your feet. Any leisure activities, you can vote with your feet. So I repeat, this is a collective responsibility, and unless we all change, all decide we're going to change and play our role, we are probably doomed to fail. We're probably doomed to see what catastrophic climate breakdown can do. But we'll only have ourselves to blame, really. We could influence the economy hugely with public opinion. If we all decided we weren't going to have any foreign holidays, that side of our economy would collapse. It wouldn't have to be a difficult decision made by our government. It would just happen. We could force all sorts of changes in the economy just with our purchasing power. Absence of it, the whole of the fashion industry, and we're just buying into it at the moment. We're just going along with it all. With regard to technology, we need it as part of the solution, but until we recognise that it is a big part of the problem as well, then we are debilitating ourselves, because we're not allowing ourselves to buy into that emotional toolkit that could dig us out of this problem. So climate awareness is essentially about leaving your comfort zone, feeling that fear, being realistic about the risks, being realistic about what's at stake, challenging social and economic norms and questioning whether they still apply and whether they're wise. Do we really? Is the income from the tourist industry really more important than our planet? So, our lovely, rather damaged world, very damaged biosphere, is currently hanging by a thread, a live thread, the thread of public opinion. Your opinion will ripple out and affect other people. You need to feel fear in order to feel motivation. So don't be scared of fear. Our modern life, apparently, our mental health, anxiety, depression is going up and up. It's because we're living in a virtual world. We're so detached from reality. If we had a serious problem, if we got our teeth stuck into a serious problem, we'd be much healthier, I reckon. Much healthier. Because we worry about things that are so out of proportion to survival in the natural world. Well, thank you very much for coming in and listening to all that. Well, you've been a lovely audience. And you can all go home now.